Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to hear all of these high-quality presentations. So thank you very much to the organizers, to UNIBO, to IGP Vignola, to Anna, and to Dr. Stefano Lulli for organizing this special occasion and for the invitation to be here. So I'll be presenting the cherry breeding program from the University of Bologna. And for those of you who are not familiar with UNIBO or this cherry breeding program, all breeding activities are conducted at the Department of Food and Agricultural Sciences that's equipped with its own gene banks, biotechnology resources, experimental fields, as well as very strong collaborations with the private sector in the agri-food industry in the zone. Cherry breeding is one of the most, the department has a very important fruit breeding activity, and it spans a history of 50 years in the most important fruit species. The cherry program is one of the most active and historic programs within the department, and it has 40 years of successful breeding experience. The breeding program can be divided into two clear phases. The first stage, from the 1980s up until the year 2000, was co-led by Professor Sansevini and Dr. Stefano Lulli, and generated the internationally acclaimed STAR series. The second phase, from the year 2000 up until now, has been led by Dr. Stefano Lulli and has resulted in 7 protected varieties with 1 underway. So today I'll focus on the second phase of the project and presenting the latest results from stage 2 of the breeding program, covering these points using this outline. So the project started in the year 2000 with crosses between old varieties autochthonous to the Vignola area that were famous for their firmness, sugar, acid, and flavor. These old varieties were crossed with new Californian varieties that were famous for their appearance, size, and shape. The outcome was 3,000 seedlings that were subjected to extremely strict quality parameters for organoleptic quality as well as production performance in the field. And this was in line with the overarching project objectives. So the key project objective was to create a bundle of varieties with different ripening periods from early to late bearing, of the highest quality and of uniformity. So when I'm talking about quality, I refer to very specific selection criteria that were used as thresholds during the selection process. So these quality criteria, things are size, where a minimum of 28 millimeter as a caliber was used, a very specific skin color, flesh firmness, sugar content, and acidity, so that genotypes that did not fit in with these minimum thresholds were immediately discarded. In terms of uniformity, what I refer to is homogeneity in these quality features, and especially within organoleptic traits, so taste as well as appearance. And the rationale behind this decision was to be able to offer to the market for a 4, 5, maybe even 6-week period, a single cherry product under a single cherry name. There were 2 outcomes to this breeding program. The first is the sweet series, so the bundle of high-quality uniform cherry varieties that initially consisted of just 5 varieties. Sweet Ariana, Sweet Lorenz, Sweet Gabriel, Sweet Valina, and Sweet Saretta, which, as you can see from the graphic, cover early, middle, and late ripening parts of the maturation of the cherries. Very recently, Sweet Stephanie was added also to the group, which is the latest ripening variety of the series. And today, we'd like to present Sweet Dave, which is the most early ripening of the series, more precocious even than Sweet Ariana. Another outcome of the breeding program was Marisa, but did not form part of the Sweet series. So in terms of the technical features of each variety, I'd like to start with the Sweet series, starting with the earliest ripening variety and moving onwards. So Sweet Dave is the newest addition to the group and is being presented for the first time here today. Sweet Dave is early bearing at the period of Berlat. First results indicate that Sweet Dave comes into first production very early, having a yield of about 5 to 11 tons per hectare, even in the third year, and this variation depends on the rootstock that's used. It has a very uniform maturity, very large fruit size, and even fruit class distribution, with 80% of the fruit sitting in the 28 plus fruit class. As is the case with all the other varieties in the series, Sweet Dave has an excellent organoleptic quality. So if you'll refer to the table on the left, comparing Sweet Dave with the reference variety in the period Berlat, Sweet Dave significantly outperforms Berlat in all key quality characteristics, from weight, durafil, firmness, sugar content, and acidity. Sweet Dave has a medium to high susceptibility to cracking. It is not a self-fertile variety, yet it can be pollinated by other varieties within the group. The following variety, Sweet Ariana, ripens 3 to 5 days after Berlat, and this variety instead is self-fertile. It reaches yields of up to 20 tons per hectare in high-density planting systems without compromising on fruit quality. So also in this case, Sweet Ariana significantly outperforms the reference variety Berlat in all quality categories: weight, durafil, firmness, sugar content, and acidity. Sweet Ariana has a significant harvest window, and harvest can be delayed up to 12 days with no negative influence on fruit quality. The variety, as with all varieties in the series, is susceptible to cracking, and so growing under nets is advised in areas where there's high rainfall. Sweet Lorenz ripens 8 to 10 days after Berlat and has a yield of about 15 tons per hectare in high-density planting systems. Sweet Lorenz is characterized by a particularly large fruit caliber that in Italy, 40% of the fruit are in the 30+ millimeter size class. In Spain, instead, the average caliber is recorded at 32 millimeters and sometimes reaching up to 34 and 36. So we were lucky enough to manage to bring some fruit over from Spain, from the Yerode area, which is here on display afterwards for anyone who would like to see after the presentation. Sweet Lorenz also demonstrates impressive on-tree fruit durability with a harvest window period of 12 to 14 days. So looking at key quality characteristics, Sweet Lorenz outperforms the reference variety in that period, so Celeste, in all key quality features: in weight, durafil, firmness, sugar content, and acidity. So I think at this point it's important to point out that in general, cherries in Vignola may be softer than the cherries produced elsewhere. The heavier soils and the types of agronomic systems, but most importantly, the high humidity, tends to produce cherries that are slightly softer of the varieties in the sweet series, but of all varieties in general. So that this means cherries in other growing regions may have a higher firmness and durafil, and in the case of the sweet series, we've seen a 10 to 15 point increase in durafil readings. This has been seen in Spain as well as in Chile, and perhaps from the samples it can be verified as well. So for these readings, it's really important to consider these figures in comparison to the reference varieties as comparative figures, so in relation to the reference. Sweet Gabriel is another of the early bearing varieties ripening at the period of Georgia. It demonstrates yields of about 18 to 20 tons per hectare and still maintains an excellent fruit quality and even size class distribution. 40% of the fruit are in the 30+ fruit class. Also, with Sweet Gabriel, fruit on-tree durability is significant, with a 12 to 14 day window period that, in which you can manage your harvest. And this is an enormous advantage because you're able to manage your harvest in line with your labor, your capacity, and with market requirements. Sweet Gabriel outperforms the reference variety Georgia in weight, firmness, sugar content, and acidity. So just to summarize, our results in the early ripening varieties are very much in line with the feedback that we've received from the producers. These varieties do excellently in on-tree durability, excellent agronomic performance, and fruit quality. Sweet Valina matures 18 to 20 days after burlat and distinguishes itself by its high and constant yields. Its very big fruit size, with 40% sitting in the 30-plus fruit class. It has a slightly darker color, mahogany at harvest, and a good on-tree durability. Sweet Valina may be slightly more susceptible to cracking and tends to yield smaller fruits on vigorous rootstocks. Sweet Valina is not self-fertile, yet it can be pollinated by other varieties in the series. And I think it's important to note, with pollination and fertility, the sweet series is totally intercompatible for pollination, as autofertile varieties are global pollinators that can be used to pollinate non-self-fertile varieties. So that because the flowers come into flowering at more or less the same time, the series is totally intercompatible between itself with no need for external pollinators. Sweet Soretta is a late-bearing variety maturing 23 days after burlat, so around the period of lapins. It's a self-fertile variety with good and constant yields of about 15 tons per hectare, where 50% of the production is in the 30-plus fruit class. Sweet Stephanie is also a late-bearing variety, coming 26 to 28 days after burlat. Also, Sweet Stephanie is a self-fertile variety that has very high production of about 15 tons per hectare, with 50% of the production in the 30-plus fruit class. For other quality features, Sweet Stephanie outperforms the reference variety in all key characteristics: weight, durafil, firmness, sugar content, and acidity. In addition, you're able to extend the harvest period of Sweet Stephanie by up to 10 days, which means that you're able to harvest Sweet Stephanie 38 days after burlat. So considering that Sweet David ripens at day 0 of burlat, and Sweet Stephanie can be harvested up to 38 days after burlat, this is really the power of the Sweet series, because for almost a 5-week period, you're able to offer to the market a single standardized product of the highest quality. Lastly, onto Marisa. There's not much time, so I'll try and get through Marisa as fast as possible. Marisa was a product of the same selection processes of the Sweet series, and it was subject to the same strict selection criteria as the Sweet series. However, it was not inserted within this group because it had slightly different characteristics. It was slightly darker in color, it had a slightly lower firmness, and so but it was still a very interesting variety. It was interesting for the period in which it harvests, so 8 to 10 days after burlat, so an early ripening variety. It's a self-fertile variety that has a very good yield, 16 to 18 tons per hectare, and that sits 60% of the production sits within the 30-plus fruit size class. It has very good on-tree fruit durability, about 8 to 10 days, and a moderate susceptibility to cracking. Marisa is also very interesting because it has a long peduncle that is very firmly attached, so it's easy for handling and it increases the storage and shelf life of the variety. So just to wrap up, this is our global footprint of the Unibo cherry varieties of the latest phase 2 generation. We have partnerships that are in various stages, so from negotiation to quarantine to testing and to commercial licensing. The cherry breeding program is very much still in a state of evolution, and the cherry breeding program continues to work within the Sweet series, but also in other projects, so who knows what the future can bring. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope that you'll enjoy the samples. Thank you.